Hello, OLAB and friends. This is Avonelle Wing. I am here today with Heather Kelley, a faculty member with the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon. Heather, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Evie. Yes, I'm a professor at CMU at the Entertainment Technology Center, and I've been doing that for about 7 years now, which is kind of mind-blowing. I think that is a testament to how awesome of a job it is, which is a fun thing to be able to share today. And before that, and still up to this day, I'm a professional game developer, so I've worked at a number of different companies, both AAA like Ubisoft, or work for hire, or working on smaller projects or licensed projects, all kinds of things, and also doing a lot of indie, experimental, artistic types of things, research games, games for change, games for smell and taste and full body interaction. I have a very kind of sporadically wide interest and in games and play, and so that ended up with applying to work at the ETC in 2014 and getting offered the job I have now, which is assistant teaching professor.
Awesome. And we are specifically having this conversation today because you reached out to me about the fact that the ETC is specifically looking to recruit people who are either in the games industry already and looking for maybe something new, or people who don't think of themselves as academics already, who might have the skill sets that you're looking to teach students. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, right before the pandemic, actually, we opened these 3 positions, and then during the pandemic, we had to shut those down for a while. We weren't doing any hiring, and now that things are opening up a little bit more, we're looking to fill 3 new faculty positions. And I'm on one of those 3 committees, but I'm sort of helping with the outreach effort that we're making, because it's kind of like different from usual academic hiring, because we're not looking to hire people that have PhDs and already. I mean, that's not by any means excluded. It's just it's that the emphasis for our hiring is on people that have professional experience, or experimental game development experience, or other kinds of things that they've done. Not going into, say, just pure academia and publishing. Of course, a lot of people have both, but yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Hold on. I'm having a technical quirk here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you and I have talked about, the fact that there tends to be almost a self-selecting out process where people make the decision, they see a call for applicants come through, and they kind of assume that it's not for them.
Right.
And so some of why we're having this conversation is to encourage people who hear this, see this, to double back and maybe think again about what they bring to the table. And you didn't start out with an academic background, correct?
Yes and no. I maybe had more of a mixture of that. I was kind of bouncing back and forth. I have done a little bit of teaching prior to this. And I had some prior experience with the ETC, so I knew how it worked, and I think that helped me see how good of a fit it would be for me. Whereas most people, except for people that have gone here and are alums, they would not have experienced how the program works, and they might think that it's not a good fit for them. So that's why I'm sort of like this bridge, because like I understand that mindset. And I know where people are coming from when they might think that they aren't qualified, for instance, and I can attest to the fact that they are. So the backgrounds that we're looking for are people that have experience in game design, and that's one position, and software engineering, and there's a third position in like leadership or entrepreneurship. So those are the kinds of experiences we hope that people will have already. And then the part about teaching is the part, well, there's maybe two aspects to that. One is that there are resources to be able to help people learn to take their professional experience and teach it. And also, our program is structured in a way that the teaching is it's almost like being kind of like a mentor to the students rather than a traditional classroom experience.
And when you said that you were already familiar with the ETC and knew that it would be a good fit, is that those two aspects, are those the things that caused you to know that it would be a good fit, or are there other things that you were taking into account when you say the ETC was a place that you could see yourself being? What about the environment messaged that to you?
Right. Well, it was some partly direct experience having visited the ETC as a professional before, and because there's a lot of interfacing with people who are actually actively working in games to come give lectures or presentations or to give feedback to the students' work. It's a very studio centric educational environment. So I'd had that direct experience of being here and seeing how it works. And also, to be honest, the job posting that went out the year that I applied was really very descriptive in the kinds of things they were looking for in the hire. And I went down that list and was like, wow, I have a lot of that. And maybe I haven't taught before, and I'm kind of nervous about that part, but the things that they're interested in bringing to the students there are things that interest me a lot, and I would love to be able to share that.
And once you got involved, so one of the questions that I've gotten, because I've been talking about the job postings online and trying to encourage people I know that are in analog gaming to see themselves at Carnegie Mellon and to at least apply, right? Don't tell you no. Let the selection committee say no. One of the questions that has come up is along the lines of, okay, so let's say that I go through the interview and I join the team. What support systems exist? How do I know that making this transition isn't going to be the most stressful thing I've ever done?
Right. Having been in the games industry, I can say this is definitely not the most stressful thing. I mean, each person is different for sure. There are different things that can cause a person stress, and so that's purely a personal interpretation. But there's a few different things, and one that is that for CMU as a whole, much like many other universities, there is a kind of center for teaching and learning. It's called the Eberly Center. It's maybe even a little more special at CMU because CMU is a university that hires a lot of technical people, business people, technical people, and practicing artists. And so they have a lot of demand for how do you help someone who has a really strong and deep domain knowledge take that information and that life experience and basically design a way for it to get transmitted to another person. So how do you do curriculum? And it's it's a very specific and practical skill. And they have people who will literally sit down and help you. You get assigned a person and you can go in with them, once or twice a week if you need to, and just sit down and they kind of help you draw it out and maybe give you assignments of what do you want people to learn and what skills, how do you build that skill development over the course of a semester. And I've used them multiple times before and love it. It's like having a sensei that's helping you figure out how people learn and do the practical things you need to get from here to there. But the other aspect specific to the ETC is that our entire core curriculum is based around these semester-long projects. So it isn't actually, if you think of I'm going to teach, I'm going to stand up in front of a crowd of 300 people and I'm going to talk at them and oh my gosh, what do I do? It is so not like that. It's a graduate master's degree. The classes are all really small. And in fact, most of the classes aren't even like classes, they're actually projects. So there's a group of like 4 to 6 students usually who get grouped together into a team, and there's going to be a bunch of disciplines on the team. So there's some, code people, there's some artists, there's some producers, some designers, and their responsibility is as grad students to basically manage themselves in taking a project from like one paragraph pitch to completion at the end of the semester, which is like 14 or 15 weeks. Often working with a client who has specific needs that they're expressing, and having to work in your own insights with what the client is looking for. And that effort of going through one whole semester and developing something like that is such a core part of the curriculum that there's kind of I wouldn't say a set way it works, but there's milestones for the educational process that are consistent every single semester. So you have like walkarounds where the faculty come and give you feedback on your initial ideas, and then there's later there at the halfway mark there's a presentation that you give where you explain what you've done so far. And there's also weekly meetings with faculty to kind of help you, reflect on what you're doing and perhaps give you advice about what a good way to move forward would be. And so as a faculty member, the semester primarily consists of going to these meetings with students and giving them feedback on what they are doing. It's not that I'm, having to impart a set curriculum. It's much more like I take everything I've known over the past however many years of my career and my creative life, and I apply that to the specific situation that the students find themselves in, with the material they're working on, with the client they have, with the technology that's available. And it's much more of a mentorship role. And so this fact that it's very consistent, repeated sort of process means that it does take a while to learn. I won't lie. Like you get in there and you have kind of like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And like so many things I need to take in. But there is a rhythm to it that you become accustomed to, and figure out how best to apply your particular skills consistently across the semesters. And on top of that, every single one of these is done as a team teaching process. So you're never doing that by yourself, or almost never. There's like rare occasions where you might be the only professor on that particular team with that particular team that semester. But mostly, like 90 it's another people perspectives talk to each other and bounce off like.
We lost some of your signal. Give us just a second for Discord to catch up. Sorry, audience members, this happens. Okay, you're back and clear again. So you were saying because it's team teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's team teaching, there's someone else always in those meetings with you that you can bounce off of later and say, hey, did you notice what's going on with this team? They maybe they need help, or they need to refer with one of the other faculty members who has a lot of knowledge in this area. And also all of the grading is done as a team. So you and the other faculty member are the grading is generally around how well the team works together, and there's certain guidelines that you're looking for them to, I would say perform to, but perform's kind of the wrong word. It's more like, are they learning to function as a team in a healthy way? And there's sort of checkpoints where you're talking with them one-on-one to see how they're doing. So you always have this other person with you. So even when you're first getting started, that means you're never teaching alone, almost never. And that might come later once you've been there a semester or two. But definitely, it's a really awesome process all the time, because you always feel like, wow, did I I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's something that's slightly out of my like my career experience, but my colleague might notice it and have something to bring to help the students with that. So that's how it works.
And you were saying that it it pinged me when you said not that there's not a learning curve and not that there aren't things to figure out. You described an extensive professional career before jumping into this. Would you say that this was on par with learning any other new position?
Yeah, for sure. And maybe even a little bit easier because most things the processes are written down, and it's a little more understood, and the learning is just in like, oh, there's a lot of details that people take for granted because they've done it already a number of times, and you realize, oh, there's actually maybe that changed, and everybody else was in the meeting where that got decided, but it's a little different than what's in this document, and it's very normal stuff like that. There's nothing that's a huge hurdle.
So one of the things that you and I have talked about too is that the search committees are specifically looking for diverse applicants, people from marginalized communities, people from different educational backgrounds. One of the things that I know just from talking to people is that there is a little bit of trepidation in stepping into a situation where there's a very strong established culture and there are a lot of high performance expectations. What can you speak a little bit to what about the ETC and the environment at Carnegie Mellon specifically lend themselves to supporting people from marginalized communities stepping into a role like this?
The intention has never been stronger to make sure that the academe is, especially because we're looking at like the games industry is my background. And so from my experience, it's like, I like to think that the educational context is leading the way because we are creating the future of our industry. And it's never, I mean, for me, like I've been through 20 years of kind of often being on the outside of the field, a member of it, but also kind of feeling like I had to just fight for every scrap of respect, And I and a number of other faculty understand the importance for not only all fields, but especially our own field going forward, that changes. And so I would say, probably since I arrived, because a lot of stuff has happened, I'm not responsible for it, but just I've noticed it because that's as long as I've been there. A real desire and push for making sure that people's experience in life as well as career is a respected part of what they bring to the school.
Excellent. So we've talked a fair amount about what the program is looking for as far as candidates and what people can expect as far as support. What are the perks of this role?
Oh man, this is like my favorite part because sometimes you can't put the perks so much in the ad. Like there are so many perks. I think the number one perk that it's like a little bit like, should I even bring this up? But I mean, if you know that it's an academic institution and your faculty, you are usually, if you want to, you can do work during the summer, but usually the main bulk of the work you do is during the school semester. So in my case, like I have a lot of other maybe creative and research interests, and like to travel and like to apply for interesting like art residencies and stuff like that. And because it's an academic semester, timing wise, you have like 3 months in the summer to do that. And that's,
Right.
you get paid a full-time salary, but you're working
basically 9 months out of the year. So that's super special.
Amazing. So for
Yeah.
analog game people who are listening, you could still do the convention season. You could still make Origins and Gen Con, and it would not interfere with your job.
No, and in fact, maybe I'll bring it up that, like, I mean, I not being so tied in on analog game conferences, I don't know how many they are or how much time they take. But if you are a professional game designer and you are attending these cons because you are like presenting and learning what's going on in your field and learning stuff, like it's considered work. Like you can take off work to do that. You aren't, you're not taking vacation to go to that. That's your job. To stay up on your field is an important part of being teaching other people. And I don't go so often now, but there's been a fair number of years where I'm going to GDC, and a lot of the school and the students especially do go to GDC. They get funding, you get funding, they get funding to go to these conferences. So it's all, it's not like endless numbers of conferences forever, but you get a reasonable amount of money to be able to go to these things. And that's definitely another one of the perks. The thing I would have done either professionally or perhaps only because it's for me like an important way to network and connect with other people in my field is absolutely part of your career. So it's supported. Should I continue on my list?
Absolutely. Please do.
Where was I? One thing that doesn't apply to me, so I'm just saying this because I know it's a fact, is that if you have kids and they decide and want to go to CMU, that is free, and it's an amazing school. You also get to take classes like I forget if there's a limit to how many classes you can take. Maybe it's like one per semester or something, but you could take classes at CMU. I mean, you could get another degree if you have enough time to do that. What are some other of the perks? It has really good healthcare. You have a lot of options about which healthcare to get. It has good retirement, all that kind of job stuff. It's a full-time job. This ETC is generally not tenure track. There might be people who are asking about that, although usually people who are asking that are ones that have gone through and gotten a PhD and what have you. It's a little like unusual in that there's a whole bunch of different ways you can enter the field. Like you obviously don't have to have like a super high degree. But if you do have one, then there's different tracks your career could go in. And I happen to have a master's, so that kind of like put me down a particular one. But that's just one of the possible tracks. But regardless of which one you're on, it's even if it's not tenure track, it is a really reliable job. There isn't like, people in the games industry are like always like, oh God, it's like 6 months before before my project ships. I better be thinking about what I might do if they like, cut half the development team, and that just isn't going to happen.
Or we just got acquired by Microsoft. Holy crap, what next?
Hello, yes. And that happened to me numerous times in my professional career. People change jobs pretty often out of necessity or out of desire. But there won't be, it would take extraordinary bad circumstances to have something like that happen at a job like this. It's dependable. I'm not even like, I'm not somebody who gets too excited by the idea of tenure, so it doesn't appeal much to me. Others, it might be more meaningful to them, and it's something that might be possible, but probably has to be negotiated
or figured out from inside the situation.
Yeah.
You mentioned kids. I'm assuming that because you're working with students and you're attending meetings, that there's flexibility for things like childcare and elder care. So if someone has parents that they're taking care of, or they have kids and have to deal with doctor's appointments or picking up a sick kid, that kind of built into the structure of this, is the flexibility to be a human in addition to being a professor.
Yeah, absolutely. At the ATC especially, our schedules are really mutable. Most of our time teaching is in small group meetings with students. And sometimes you will have a class you're teaching that has like a set time, and if you're not there, you would need to have somebody that could fill in, or have maybe have a TA or something like that who could help out with that. But most of the other meetings, because they're with small groups, not that it's like super easy to just change things at the last minute, but if you needed to, it would not be a hardship on most teams. They could arrange to meet with you at a different time. Because they have certain sort of core hours that they're working when they're mostly all there in the building. The ETC has a physical building, which is, you can maybe think of it being set up a little bit like an incubator in a way, because each team gets its own room. This is, of course, outside of COVID lockdown stuff, because right now we're on work from home. But each team has its own room, and they have hours where they are all together there in the room working on their project, and they work on those projects like it's the majority of their curriculum. It's like, I forget how many credit hours, but it's like basically 30 something hours a week that they're working on the project, and then they just have one other class that they take as an elective. So their schedules aren't all exactly lined up because they take different electives, but they are generally all working there together. And within that time that they're there together, it's possible, there's so much calendaring that goes on. Like the first week of the semester is just this like unbelievable flurry of trying to figure out who's available when, to try to get those meetings set on the calendar. But it is also possible when you have something just happening in life that you, if you aren't able to make that time, again, there's another faculty member who's always there, and so perhaps they just go ahead and hold the meeting without you, and they record it, or somebody takes notes and shares it with you later, or maybe you meet with the team at another time. But yeah, it's really a humane life balance schedule.
That's amazing. And it feels like it gives you the opportunity to model that balance to your students as well.
For sure. Yeah. And of course, they're very high performance, super smart, super skilled students, and they do push themselves. And I think actually that's maybe worth noting, is that like even the ETC itself, its origins are maybe in a little bit more of a crunchy, old school game dev vibe. And I think over the years, we've actively realized the harm that actually causes, the burnout, and don't want to model that. I mean, the students feel a lot of pressure themselves, but we as faculty have changed the way we communicate and talk about and think about the amount and kinds of labor that the students are putting in. Like, we don't let them, have a sleeping bag under their desk kind of thing.
Right.
So that's been good. That's like one example of like the way that the culture is more supportive for a wider variety of people. And we do model that. I think the faculty are all they all have a good work-life balance, and I think the students can see that from them. I don't want to lose track. Maybe I didn't write these down, so I have one on my mind of things that are important to note, and that there is assistance for moving. Like, I moved from Vienna, Austria when I took this job, and that would probably not been affordable for me to do on my own. But the CMU, it's not just the ETC. CMU has support for relocation, and I don't know the specifics of it. I don't know what it depends on. When you apply and get into conversations, it's worth some talking and to the people that you're working with, to make sure it's enough to support your transition. And then also, I don't know too many specifics about internationals, but coming, because I am not myself, I'm American. So I didn't have to go through that, but I do know that there's a lot of resources because, again, CMU hires so many international faculty and brings so many international grad students, and they have like an entire department set up to like help people figure out and get through that process. So you won't be just left floundering on that either.
Right. It sounds like there's an intention to invest in somebody that comes on board as faculty.
Yeah, I mean, they're hoping that you're going to spend the rest of your career there. There's, they want you to be there until you retire, and they want to make it a good move for you.
Right. So for people who are listening and are thinking, well, maybe I might apply, I'm just going to make the point across the board that if you think that you might not be the best fit, let the search committee make that decision. Send in a resume, reach out to Heather. I'm going to make sure that her contact information goes into the show notes. Go ahead and apply, because if you are not what you think of as a traditional academic or traditional, right? Media fills our heads with all sorts of understandings of what that means. If you don't think you fit the mold and you don't apply, and the only people who do apply are the people that match that media mold, that's all the department's ever going to be, because they can't hire people that don't apply. And so from an intersectional perspective, you applying gives them one more person to consider that doesn't look like that mold, and gives them one more opportunity to broaden those horizons for the students. And so from a be the change you want to see sort of perspective, even if you make it all the way through the interview process and you go and visit Pittsburgh and you turn around and say, actually, this isn't for me, you gave them one more person that doesn't fit the mold to consider for the opportunity. And maybe they'll come back to you and say, okay, maybe you can teach remotely, right? Give them the opportunity to accommodate you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And you reminded me, actually, when you were asking me for examples of how we're trying to make the environment more welcoming. When we were putting together the listing for these positions, we of course looked at what we'd listed in the past, and we looked at other like CMU postings and things like that. And looking at that, from the perspective I have of being like an intersectional feminist and very a social justice warrior, if you want to put it that way. I'm not afraid of taking that title on. I realized that like the way these postings are even written is just sometimes so jargon heavy, and so formal. And I did a lot of effort to not like change what it actually was asking, but just change the language that it was using to show more of the benefits, and to hopefully invite people in who wouldn't normally be thinking of that particular career. And another really important thing was it has a bunch of asks for the application. Like, that's why it's really important this word gets out now, because there are some things you have to do besides just dropping your resume. It's expecting that there's things like a portfolio, website, and it doesn't have to be like complicated. It's just more like, we need to see the stuff you've done. And another thing it asks for is a few different written submissions around different topics. And like, frankly, I'd never written one of those. Like, what's a teaching statement? That's such an old school, like, I went to PhD and I learned how to teach, which frankly, a lot of people didn't, but what does that even mean? What does it look like? So, and there's also, we're asking for a diversity statement. We want to know for everybody who's applying how they are going to work to address the inequities that we've got. So things like that, aren't a thing you'd get from a normal job application. They're a little more specialized, but the the listing for the positions, the one that's on our internal website, the one you'll be sharing, has links outward to other resources that can help you understand better how to write those statements, like what should be in them. How do you take what most of the time you've already done the thing that needs to be done, and it's simply a matter of how do you like take the stuff you've done and just put it into a page worth of a few paragraphs that tells what you did and tells why it mattered to you and what inspired you to do that. And even if you're speculating, like if you've never taught, but like you learned how you learn, and so you know how you would like to teach, explaining it, so it's really not about like prove yourself in these essays. It's more like we want to get to know you better, and it's simply a matter of realizing that what you've already done is a really high qualification for this job, and finding a way to tell us that.
I think that is an excellent summary. I've gone and poked at the job listings, and I've never seen a job listing that's like, here are some resources on how to be a better applicant, like how to craft a better application for this role. The fact that there are items built in where you can just go and look and see is amazing, and I think does a lot to signal that you're reaching towards that accessibility.
Yeah. I'm a design nerd, so it's like, this is a design problem. We can solve this with like knowing what the expectations and the format is, and just giving that to people. It's not cheating to like have that on hand.
But it does defy a lot of people's sense of what academia is and how academia engages with itself. And I think that's really valuable to point out and put front and center.
Yeah, and if there's like one message I would want to get across, it's like it's kind of best of both worlds. We get a lot of the benefits of being in an academic setting without a lot of the baggage.
Right. So I have somebody who's going to watch this later that would crawl up my nose if I did not ask about disability, accessibility, and accommodations. So I don't know that you've specifically had experience with your accessibility department or whatever that looks like, but can you talk a little bit about if somebody does have a disability, how that's interacted with as a faculty member?
I can. And a lot of that is an outgrowth of my own personal work. Part of my design practice is in disability in game design. And in fact, considering disability as like a kind of, each disability is a kind of design constraint. And we don't use constraint in a bad way. It just means like one of the factors you consider when you're making a design is like how people are going to access it. And I can say that our building is accessible. Like a lot of academic buildings are kind of old and like hard to get around in, but ours is fairly new, and it's fully wheelchair accessible. We've had people come to speak before and come to collaborate who have different disabilities, and it's not something that they need to hide. And I can't speak as well to like what CMU's policies are, because a lot of things that will happen will be related to CMU's standing policies, but they do have a lot of, students themselves can let the Office of Disability know, and they have a very active office, and can communicate what their needs are to that office, and then that lets them the students have a thing that they can present to their faculty to know what kind of accommodations might be appropriate for their needs. So it's something that's on everybody's mind. And is there something more specific that you think might be on this person's mind that I would need to answer?
No, the fact that it's even a topic of conversation, the fact that it has come up and that it is considered and that there was thought put into the building being accessible just establishes a baseline of being prepared to have the conversations. Having a faculty member that, when I say, what about disability accommodations, says, actually, I specialize in talking about disability. It like sets a baseline for the conversation, and it isn't, oh, we've never thought about that, or we're working on it, but we're really not there yet. No, they're like, this, I think, touches on the things that would come up in a conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. And just in case interested, the project I worked on or developed is called Chair Jam. It was a 3-day game jam that I did along with some really awesome folks at HCI. That was to explore how different wheelchairs, the people that use wheelchairs, how they could collaborate with game designers to think of creative or playful ways for their own chairs, to create something new in the world.
Oh, that's really interesting. For people who are watching that don't know what HCI is, what is that?
Yeah, human computer interface. And I guess at CMU you have to add that extra I. It's hard to say. HCII, Human Computer Interaction Institute. So it's not always interface,
Right. Okay, is there anything else that you would like to throw in that doesn't fall into the broad categories we've talked about so far?
Looking at my notes. I think I covered all the stuff that I scribbled down right before our call. Yeah, unless there's any calls from any questions from anybody out there currently. But of course, yeah, I'm super happy to answer questions. I'll share an email with you later. I might have one, like a special one set up just for this purpose, and give you that one.
Excellent. And viewers who are catching up, you can tweet us at the OLab on Twitter. I'm at Avonelle. Most of you know where to find me. And I will channel you back in if any of our other methods aren't working. It is okay to reach out to me. I'm invested in this faculty search being as successful as possible at hitting its goals of bringing people in and inviting people to the table. So I'm happy to help. I'm happy to be a conduit. I'm happy to go ask questions and come back with intel. I've already connected people to Heather over email that have reached out to me through Facebook. So it is okay to reach out. I will help direct you to a person that can answer questions. Probably Heather, who will help us find other people.
Probably.
All right, Heather, I think this was really productive, and I think that this is going to be useful for people. I really appreciate your time, and I'm glad that you let us help you do this.
Thank you so much, Avi. It's been very great to finally get out in words all of the stuff that I am so excited for people to know.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, viewers. We will see you soon.